Human sex trafficking. First of all, I want to talk about what is it. First of all, it's modern day slavery. Hi, Linda. Is modern day slavery an industry that victimizes youth, women, and men by multiple methods of manipulation. It plays upon basic human needs that people have for love and for shelter. As a whole, there's the umbrella of human trafficking, and it includes two categories, labor trafficking and sex trafficking. Tonight, we're specifically going to deal with sex trafficking, although labor trafficking is also a big issue. Okay? I have put up two definitions on the slide for you. One is the illegal trade of human beings for commercial sexual exploitation or forced labor. The second is from the U.S. federal law, and it's defined as the act of including children in the sex trade or coercing or deceiving adults into performing commercial sexual acts. The difference between prostitution and trafficking is that trafficking involves the use of force or coercion. I think that anyone under the age of 18, regardless of whether there is force or coercion, is considered a sex trafficking victim. I think about the way that prostitutes, as they call them, are perceived, and I think that we as a nation, we as a people, not just as a church, but I think we have to change our perception. These are victims. No child dreams of waking up one day and becoming a prostitute. No child dreams about waking up and walking the streets and having to sell themselves to meet their daily basic needs. This is the result of crisis and trauma in lives. Fighting human trafficking is a pro-life, pro-human activity according to the Senior VP of the Family Research Council. I've listed some scriptures there, and I'll read, I think I'm going to read Psalm 139. Please take the time, they're also in your handouts. Please take the time to look these up so that we can understand the value of life. We are human beings created in the image of God, and God takes it very seriously when His image is touched. Psalm 139 is probably the most well-known scripture. I'll read 3 verses 13 to 16. For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. Isaiah 49, Jeremiah 1:5, and Galatians 1:15 and 16 all speak of prophets or ministers that knew that they were ordained to their ministry before birth. They had a destiny that was upon their lives, that they were called even before they were formed in their mother's wombs. And this is woven all throughout Scripture. So the lives that we see out there on the street, those are destinies. Those are sons and daughters of God who have a calling, who have a purpose in life that is being destroyed. We cannot take that lightly because God does not take that lightly. You saw some statistics already, but I'll give you a breakdown of global, national, state, Bay Area, and even some minor statistics. First of all, just the sex trafficking alone is a $32 billion a year industry, more than Nike, Google, and Starbucks combined. There are currently, the estimates say, between 27 and 30 million victims. 161 out of 169 countries in the world are affected by this. 94% of sex trafficking victims are female. That's 24 million. There are 2 million children that are currently exploited. Now keep in mind, please, this is an illegal industry. So it's very hard to get accurate numbers. Likely, in all likelihood, the numbers are a lot higher, much higher than we're able to see because much of this is done in secret. So there are 2 million children that are exploited sexually. You saw, I think it said every 30 seconds a child is trafficked. That's as a whole because there are many children that are trafficked into labor as well. Some estimates, in some countries, they say like Africa, almost 100% of the children there are sexually exploited. 3/4 of them are trafficked online, in their bedrooms, at home while their parents are in the living room. And the saddest thing, I think, is that less than 1% of victims are identified and rescued. It affects all races, it's non-discriminating. One study was done in 2011 in which 40% were black, 26% were white, 24% Hispanic, and then some other minorities. But that was one study. It's across the board. It affects every every race, excuse me. National statistics, all 50 states here in the US are affected. The US is responsible for approximately 1/3 of the global total profit, $9.5 billion. Almost 20,000 people are brought into the US illegally each year to be sexually exploited on top of the ones that are already here, that it's happening to. US buyers, you saw that, make up 25% of the sex tourists. And that means that when people travel from the US, they go to buy sex in other countries. And there are currently up to 300,000 children sexually exploited here in our borders. California is one of the top 3 states in the nation known for human sex trafficking. We have 3 of the 10 worst cities: San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego. Oakland is also a major thriving hub. If you walk down East 14th, the track they call it, they say up to 100 girls per night are trafficked there. The National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline received the highest number of reports on cases or victims from California in the year 2012. And you can see how few victims have been identified. That doesn't even mean rescued, that means identified. And how many were arrested and then actually prosecuted. It's very few. Bay Area statistics. The FBI has called this Bay Area a high-intensity child prostitution area. You know, we think this is like over there somewhere. We think this is far away. We think this is a foreign problem. This is not a foreign problem. Child prostitution is happening here in our streets. I already told you that San Francisco and Oakland are thriving hubs. And also San Leandro Bay Fair Mall is a spot, massage parlors and hotels. Particularly the Green Shutter is a residential hotel. We stood out, we had the privilege of doing street outreach with Love Never Fails, and we stood out in front while one group went up to minister. We stood out in front, and while we stood there for about an hour, we saw, and I'm sure it's very, what we saw was minuscule compared to what happens, but just in that hour, we saw 4 acts of prostitution, including one that a gentleman that walked her to the edge of the parking lot to be sold to somebody and then got on his bike and rode off. The massage parlors, there's one right here on Jackson. San Francisco is very well known. There's over 90 massage parlors where sex is for sale in San Francisco. The average, they say, about 8 women working at the massage parlors, okay? So that's about 700 sex masseuses in San Francisco that are known. But this is also moving into our city. There's one on the corner here. I don't know if you've seen a 571 Cafe. I've heard reports that it's taking place there. I did a Google search on massage parlors in Hayward, and there are more than 15 of them that were listed that were not identified with health and beauty, which means that they're selling other services. Minor statistics. The average age of entry for girls is 12 to 14 years old. It goes as young as, they say young average at 11, but it can go as young as 4 or 6 years old. 11 to 13 is the average age for boys. These children live an average of 7 years because of the trauma and the disease. A pimp can make $150,000 to $200,000 per child per year, and the average pimp has 4 to 6 girls. On average, a minor is sold 10 to 15 times a day, which equals nearly 6,000 rapes per year of a child. Currently, there are not laws in place for the restoration of minors, so minors who are rescued are charged with prostitution, and they're put in juvenile hall, which is part of the reason that they're out there in the first place, because the juvenile hall system is not working, and so they run away. And it struck my heart pretty hard when Rodrigo was presenting on abortion, and he said, the reason that the system is messed up is because it never belonged to them in the first place. The mandate to care for the orphans was for the church. And I thought, I never realized that before. And you read the scriptures, but to realize that it's messed up because it's not their job. It's our job to care for these children and to love them and to put things in place for them. 60% of victims were in foster care. 75% of girls are controlled by pimps. And 1/3 of US runways are recruited into pornography or prostitution within 48 hours of hitting the street. Why does this exist? Why is this a problem? How did this happen? First of all is the market for sex. The reason that there's such a supply is because there's such a demand. The industry of pornography and the strip clubs and the sex addiction are fueling this. And so the more we deal with that problem, the less that we'll have to create the supply to fill that need. Low risk and high profit. The penalties are greater for drug trafficking than they are for human sex trafficking. The profit, these pimps make between $500 and $1,000 a night per woman. So that estimates of 5 to 10 customers tonight. In some places, they have to service as many as 50 men a night. That makes a profit of between $182,000 to $365,000 a year, times 4 or 6 girls. It's a huge profit and a low risk. Because of cultural issues, we have this problem. First of all, the family system breakdown. Most parents are, they're two parents that have to go out to work, or they're parents that are broken, or they're parents that are split, the absence of a father in the home. Second, glorification of the pimp culture. We see this in everything from our music videos to video games to the clothes that are coming out for children, and they're getting younger and younger. The very short skirts and the high heels and even the inappropriate under attire for children now. And they sing about it and they announce it on the street corners. They even have what are called pimp balls throughout the United States, and also in Mexico is a big place, where these pimps will literally bring their women and march them around like a parade, and then there will be a duel and the pimps will fight, and whoever loses, these girls have to service the one that wins. The one that loses, all of these girls have to go and service all of those men. And this is a ball, this is a formal event that people get dressed for. And this happens here in our land. Technology, there are actually, not only is it happening in children's bedrooms, not only is it happening over Facebook and the different websites, but there are online prostitution sites. MyRedbook.com holds over 55,000 reviews of Northern California sex workers. Reviews. People talk about how good they are, where you can find them. Phone numbers are listed, names are listed. There's a site, getlaid.com, where you can purchase a membership, a gold or a silver membership, depending on how long you want a 3-day trial period. You could do 1 month, you could do 12 months or 18 months, where you are guaranteed to meet with somebody and be able to be serviced. Currently, the measures to stop and protect this they're growing, but they're not enough yet. There are 11 current federal laws that deal with protection, prosecution, and prevention. So that's increasing the penalties for traffickers and providing more support for the victims, and also requiring law enforcement to be trained in how to deal with these women when they come across them. Right now, because they're so understaffed, you see police drive by and act like it's not happening. California, we have 3 major laws. One was made in 2005, one 2010, and the most recent, Prop 35, was passed in 2012. Prop 35 increased the prison terms for up to 15 years. So previously it was 3 to 8 years a prison term. And if you deal with prison terms, if you've ever known anyone in prison, you don't really serve that much time. They increased the fines up to $1,500,000 to help pay for the services for the victims. It required sex offenders to disclose their internet accounts, and it prevented the victims from, if they were participating and there was proof that they were participating willfully, then that law prevents them, that evidence from being used against them in a court. California scored 9 out of 12 points, which puts us in the top tier in the Polaris Project 2013 state rating. So they rated all 50 states. It's a rating system based on 10 categories of laws that are critical to a basic legal framework that combats human trafficking, punishes the traffickers, and supports the survivors. So what that means is if you have a rating of 7 or more, which we do, It means that our state has passed significant laws to combat this, and that we should continue to take additional steps to improve and implement the laws. The weakness, unfortunately, is that there are not many measures in place for the rehabilitation of the victims. And so what happens is, even if they're pulled off the streets, they go back. Trafficker profiles. Who's doing this? Previous victims. So they're raised up in the life, then they go out and they perpetrate the same thing. They just keep it going. Gang members, drug and organized crime lords and business owners. Women, surprisingly enough, make up 46% of the recruiters. It's not just men doing this. Men pose as boyfriends and father figures. And school-aged children, especially middle school-aged children, are sent into middle schools to pose as instant best friends to lure children out of the schools into this. And once they're nabbed, that's it. Because what happens is they move them from place to place to place to place so you can't find them. 88% of exploiters have been abused, which I think is interesting. So you understand why they're perpetrating this. They're not healed. This happens in all different places. On the internet, in yards. I heard an interview of one young lady who was literally a U-Haul truck literally pulled up, backed up to her front door and grabbed her. And she ran. She ended up getting away after 2 years, but what she endured was just crazy. So it happens everywhere. In taxi drivers, at restaurants, malls and shopping centers, parks, on public transportation, movie theaters, shelters, churches even. So we can't afford to ignore this. And also through solicitations, mostly this happens abroad, through study or work solicitations. So there's an ad put out for someone to come and work and doing house care or child care or the beauty industry or modeling, and really what it is sex trafficking. And as soon as they get here, all of their ID and their documents are taken away from them, so they don't know where they're at, they have no way to prove who they are, and they're just caught in this life. The way that the victims are groomed, obviously the cultural norms desensitize us. So it's really not surprising for a young woman to respond to a man's vulgar approach these days, unfortunately, because the pimp culture that we've glorified makes it okay for men to talk to women like they're products. And we have so many broken young women that they respond to that thinking that someone likes them, someone cares about them, someone loves them. And so they're desensitized. Men who pose as boyfriends or lovers. There's a false family system that takes place in this. This just blew my mind. So in a pimp ring, you have the pimp who poses as a father. You have what's called the bottom lady, which poses as the mother who raises up the younger girls coming in and teaches them how. And everybody has their place in the family. It's like a gang infrastructure, right? That's why people go and see gangs, because they're looking for that affiliation, that bonding of the family. So they have a false family system also in this culture. Online predators, we talked about that. They gain access while most children are at home. And the friends are sent into schools. They're drugged, they're cuffed, they're beaten, and they're threatened until their hope is destroyed and their will is broken. So a lot of times when you see a woman out there and she's walking the streets acting like she's happy and she don't want to talk to you and she doesn't want to get out, it's because her will has already been broken. There's no fight left in her. There's no point anymore. Oftentimes they've tried to escape and they haven't been able to. So this is what they've learned to accept. And so they're doing it because if they don't, they will be beaten. The impacts of sex trafficking are astounding. Physically, there's abuse, rape, STDs, reproductive health problems, unwanted pregnancy, and forced abortions. Forced abortions are a major, I guess you could say, fallout of this. I saw one testimony that a lady, her pimp tried to perform an abortion on her and it did not work. The baby died, but it never came out. So for 2 months, she was forced to walk around with a dead fetus in her womb and continue to perform sexual acts for people. So they have abortions. They're not given time to heal. They're just sent back on the streets. They have complications from the abortions, addictions, overdose, death by trauma, or suicide and murder. Emotionally and psychologically, things like post-traumatic stress disorder, you can imagine, insomnia, nightmares, fears, profound shame and guilt, something called traumatic bonding syndrome, where almost out of survival mode, you become empathetic toward your captor, the person who is beating you, the person who is raping you. You form a bond with them in order to survive. And so they literally see when they're not being beaten, they take that as a kindness being shown to them. Yeah. And so they develop that. Obviously, challenged relationships with other people because of the lack of the ability to trust. Spiritually, obviously, there's an extremely warped perception of God. And within the church especially, I think there's a feeling that they will be unwelcomed because it's such a social stigma. Family, children who are brought into this, or born into this life, obviously, they're raised and they're going to reproduce the cycle by default. It's just a broken family system. And for society, there's an increased potential for other violent crimes to hit the area where this is happening because of the link between sex trafficking and other organized crimes. So things like increased gang activity, child exploitation, public health problems, depressed wages. These are things that will accompany this in a society. Not to mention a society who reproduces victims. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay, why they enter. These women enter a lot of times because of poverty. They cannot meet their basic needs for survival. A lot of them are single moms. And so they sell themselves. Either they come from absent or negligent or abusive homes, and they're looking for something better, and oftentimes that's exactly what's offered by a pimp or by a trafficker. In order to earn money for themselves or their families, I read and heard stories of daughters who were sold by their families into this. Also, earlier sexual abuse, people who are homeless or runaways. This happens a lot in our homeless society. We feed the homeless, but this is happening in our homeless group. I've seen it, talked with them. Inadequate care or supervision or food or shelter in the home life. This I thought was interesting. Exposure to domestic violence in the home is one of the risk factors. And they stay, we talked about the traumatic bonding syndrome. They stay because of the social stigma, because they're not accepted anywhere. They stay because there are very few true places of refuge for them, because there are corrupt authority figures everywhere you go. So not only are the police in some areas, and some of them in every area, are corrupt, the government officials service these women. They go and purchase their services, I should say. Pastors, men from church, men that are supposed to be trusted, so their idea and then their image of men who can be trusted is completely shattered. So why would they risk that again? They're already out there anyway. Why are they going to risk getting their hope up to be rescued and find that it's the same thing all over again? Rescue is not enough. It's not enough to go out to the street and pull them off. That's a good start. But they're not, like we said, there are not enough measures in place. There are not enough safe homes put together and functioning to be able to house these women. And look at what's required for a complete restoration to take place. They need a safe place, which includes isolation and protection from the pimps, where they can't be found. They need their basic needs provided for. That goes for physical as well as love and acceptance. And that goes deep. They need counseling, therapy, healthcare, legal assistance, education, job training, and then help getting a job. Sometimes they need transportation, and they need ongoing support and mentoring. So it's not something that one person can, it takes a whole village, it takes a whole church, it takes a whole city, it takes a whole nation to really come together and do this. But restoration is a non-negotiable part of their healing and transformation if we really want to see them come out of this and stay out of this. And so that's why we partnered with Love Never Fails. They're locally an organization, and they're doing this. They're going out on the streets. They have rescued in 2 years 23 women and children off the streets of Oklahoma. Not only have they rescued them, but they're putting them through programs that are offering job training. They have a program that offers paid job training. They have a program that places them in jobs. They have counseling and healthcare and all these things that are provided, safe shelter. And so, if we can't do it ourselves, then we partner with somebody who can, and we give our support to them because they're already set up and they're just waiting for that empowerment. All right, so this is the most important part, I feel. What we can do. What can you do, and what can I do, and what can we do together? I know this is a big issue, and it's overwhelming, and through my studying, I didn't even know what to do with myself. I just thought, I felt like Pastor John said, have I just been living in a little Christian bubble? This is happening all everywhere around me. I have to do something. You know, the compelling of the Holy Spirit is moving me. I can't just sit anymore and look at the numbers and then turn it off and go to bed in my nice, warm, comfortable bed with my cup of coffee. You know, there's times for that, but I can do something. And he gave me hands and feet to do it. So what can we do? I think there's a 3-tier approach for what we can do individually. There's inward, upward, and outward. And I think that all 3 are non-negotiable. First of all, inwardly, I think we have to acknowledge that we have a responsibility to respond. This is a human effort. This is a pro-life effort. We have a responsibility to respond. Was it William Wilberforce said, "You may choose to look the other way, but you can never say again that you did not know." Second, get your house in order. Get your house in order. Get my house in order. Take a look at my family. Are my children at risk because of behaviors that I'm engaged in? Am I paying enough attention to them? Am I providing what they need? Am I home enough? Do I have issues with sexual addiction? Am I broken and do I need healing? Because all these things put my children at risk. And so it's important for us to look at our families and to look at ourselves and to reach out for help. That's why we have a church. Right? And there's hope, and there's help, and there's healing that's available. And so in the back of your packets, there's actually some phone numbers there for you if you need help. If you need a place to start, there are phone numbers for men to call, and there are phone numbers for women to call, people in this church body who will help guide you through a process of restoration, whatever you're dealing with. Okay, so that's the inward. Upward, obviously we pray. We can't underestimate the power of prayer to move God on their behalf, right? And so there's also in your packets, there's a 31-day prayer challenge. Start tomorrow and pray. It's not that difficult. Just pray that one thing for that day. Just keep it somewhere where you can see it, and let's join together as a force. That's the epitome of faith. This shows up in our prayers, right? If we really believe it, we're going to pray. So we can pray as a church and as an individual. Outwardly, I'm sorry. Real quickly, I just wanted to say 3 things just off the top of my head that we should be praying for. Number 1, just for a greater capacity. A lot of times we feel like we already have so much on our plate. How could I make room for more? But if this is God's heart, and if this is what God is bringing to us, then He's going to increase our ability to do it. He's going to increase our strength. He's going to move resources. We may have to realign our priorities even, but He will help us to make room. Also, to prayerfully consider foster care and adoption. I found this out, and I've always... My husband and I've always talked about it, but you know, financially that's a big commitment, and I've heard that it's very expensive. But I just talked to somebody. I found out that in the county of Alameda, it is free. It is free to adopt and foster a child, and they will even give you support, financial support. So we really don't have much of an excuse. We definitely can pray about this for God to move our hearts. Okay? Because I think, you know, if we fostered, think about it, if you took in a child who's a baby or 2 or 3 years old, that child will never end up on the streets. You're saving one, right? And so it starts there. Okay, outwardly. We can give, starting right here, right now. You can help with the fundraising. You can buy life bands. You can donate to the organization. There's also some other resources on the back table that you can connect with if you want to give abroad into a foreign, more of a foreign angle. You can get involved locally. There are lots of opportunities with Love Never Fails. You can talk to Brenda Shilly at the back table tonight. You can volunteer at their tables. You can sign up to learn, take a course in mentoring and help to do that. You can go out on their street outreaches, which was just an amazing experience. They really are committed to going out and personally telling these women on the street that they're precious and that they're loved by God and that they're loved by their community. And so to be a part of that is just really amazing. You can help to create awareness. Use your Facebook pages and just spread the word so that people know, because I think, like us, so many of us had no idea that it was this big, that it was this huge. And so please help spread the word through your social media. And then there are some more lists on the back table. There are 2 lists in particular that list 20 ways or 21 ways, just easy, simple things that you can do to help fight this. And so maybe you can't adopt a child right now, but maybe you can do one of those 21 things, or maybe you could do 5 of those 21 things. I think every little bit helps in this fight. As a church, I think first of all we have to seek to welcome victims, to make this a place where they're welcome, where they're loved, where they're restored, where they're built up, where they understand that they're daughters, and really make them part of our families. I think that as a church we can designate families, and maybe families can even volunteer to mentor and support victims as God begins to bring them in. You know, if God would bring a family in, or bring a mother and her children, or just bring a woman in, that we would be able to see what she needs, and as a church come together and meet it, or as a family come together and meet those needs for her. And then also, I think that as a church, if you're not currently a part of a ministry in the church, talk to the pastors or talk to the leaders and join one, so that we can collectively raise up these ministries that will bring healing and bring hope to people. And if there's a ministry that you have a vision for and it's not yet here, talk to Pastor John or talk to one of the leaders, and let's see what we can do, because you're here for a reason, and every one of us is an active part of the body. And so if we all work together, and God has given you a piece of vision, and you a piece of vision, and you a piece of vision, it's all going to come together to form what he's doing here, right? And so if you're not working your part of the vision, then I'm going to be coming over here trying to drag you along and working harder, right? So if we all do it together, it's not going to feel as heavy, and it's not going to be as difficult. All right. So I'm going to close out right now, and I'm going to invite up in just a minute Brenda from Love Never Fails. She's just going to tell you just a brief little bit about the organization, and then she brought someone very, very special with her. And she's going to speak to us about her experience tonight. So Love Never Fails is an organization that was formed in 2011. And I put this picture up there, even though it seems a little bit harsh, because I think it has to get to that place where we really do take it personally. It's too easy to say, oh, that'll never be me. But how many mothers and fathers have said that, and their children are trapped? We have to take this personally. And this organization was formed in 2011. They are dedicated to the rehabilitation, education, and protection of youth involved in or at risk of becoming involved in the sex trade. They currently have a board and committee members, all volunteers, that include victims and their families, business owners, teachers, social workers, pastors, local government executives, attorneys, healthcare workers. The last I spoke with Vanessa, she said she had about 175 different volunteers that God has brought her way. And so people are funding, people are donating money, people are donating their time and their services, and God is really anointing their work, and they're reaching lives. And so, Brenda, I'd like to invite you up, please. Can you put the last slide up? I'm going to leave the phone numbers up, and there are more resources on the back if you'd like.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for having us. My name's Brenda, and I'm with Love Never Fails. I've been with Love Never Fails about a year and a half now. I was kind of in a bad frame of mind, looking to find something close to my heart when a woman came to one of our ministries from church and talked about Love Never Fails. As Chantel mentioned, it was founded in 2011, and Vanessa Scott is the founder. She had the ministry of the dance, the girls from our dance group at church. And one day one of her girls went missing. So she went out looking. And what she found was just amazing. You know, she had no idea. She's just a regular working person, just like the rest of us. She had no idea as to the capacity of the exploitation that's out there. The girl that was originally exploited, she was walking through the park, and a guy said to her, "How you doing?" And let's go get something to eat, and we can go to the mall, and how about if I buy you some shoes? And so, he just coerced her into being a friend, and then continuing on to abusing her, and then selling her. He moved her from location to location, so no one could find her. But she was just adopted by one of our volunteers. She's been in the foster system. turns out that the volunteer that adopted her was also exploited as a younger woman. So Love Never Fails has different facets of our organization. One is we go and we do outreach at least once a month. We go to anywhere, San Jose, Solano County, you name it, we go. Wherever they're needed, wherever there's girls that need to be loved on, to be reminded that they're valued, that they're worth something, that they're not what those names on the records, the CDs, whatever they're called now, DVDs, that's not who they are. That because your family even feels that you're damaged goods, you are not damaged goods. You are worth so much more than you could even imagine. So we remind them that they're loved by God, and we pray with them, and we let them know that there's hope out there. You know, we tell them that we can get you in a program if you need drug rehab, if you need to get your GED, if you have children that you need to try to find a means to support them. Because that's what Vanessa found, okay? Once a girl is taken off International Boulevard, she needs some support. So, as Chantel mentioned, we have a funded job program. We have we found that we needed mentors to help the girls, to take the girls to go down and get their birth certificate so they can get a driver's license. I mean, just the basic things that we take for granted, that we were taught or shown as we were raised, the girls don't know how to do it. A lot of them. A lot of them that we talk to say they have jobs. A girl that I talked to a month before last, she had gone through a dental assistant program. And she was looking for a job, but it wasn't coming fast enough, and she had to support herself, and she was also being controlled. So what do? You go with what you know. And unfortunately, it's not always healthy what you know. So another one of the facets of our organization is search and rescue, where we go online and we look for girls. We have families that call and say, Susie's missing, can you help me find her? So, and what we also see, as she mentioned in the statistics, that a lot of girls are now being exploited online. So we can't get out there, and it breaks my heart, we can't get out there and touch the girls and say we love you. You know, there's no way to get to the girls because they're just being turned over through online means. So it's making it more of a challenge in that regard. Another one of the programs that we have, it's called Love Don't Hurt. It's an education program that we take to the schools, and we're mandated actually in Oakland Unified for 7th grade. So we teach it from the elementary school up into high school. And we tell the kids what it says on the back of my shirt, that they're valued, that they're loved, that they're cared for, that they're worth so much more than that. Because there's so many kids that have seen different forms of abuse, be it Uncle Bobby babysat for them and Uncle Bobby happened to be looking at pornography while he was babysitting them, so they were exposed to that. Or, you know, their brother or their mother or somebody else. You know, we've picked up, I don't mean to use the word picked up, but we've had women that have decided to change their life, and then they go and they look for their daughters that are out in the life that they don't even know because they've been trafficked all over the United States. They don't even know where their own daughters are. That it's generational at times, unfortunately. So, but this sounds kind of, I was really thrilled a month or two ago to go to Los Altos Hills, okay, where the money is. And there was a synagogue there that had a trafficking event. And what that tells me is that even the people that used to believe that it didn't happen in their neighborhood, that it only happened in our neighborhood, in my neighborhood, in your neighborhood, they're realizing now that it's happening right next door. It's happening to their nieces. It's happening to their next door neighbor. So thank God that the word is getting out. And more men and women. We are actually now, part of our Life Launch program is we are going to be taking in boys that are at risk. So we can deter whatever their exposure and thought process might be at the time. So we're looking for any kind of help. Mentors, we're looking for therapists, we're looking for people to drive them, to pick them up from BART so they can come to these programs. There's so many needs for these kids that are at risk or that are exploited. Just little stuff, just like I said, you know, just to pick them up at BART and take them to a meeting. Because we work with so many different organizations, it's not all centered at our one location, which is mainly at Faith Fellowship Church in San Leandro. So I really appreciate you all being here. It's wonderful, wonderful that you are coming together as a community and supporting and learning about how to help these people that cannot help themselves, that need our assistance and our love. Thank you. I'm going to introduce you to one of our survivors. She's going to tell her story.
Hi, my name is Beverly. Well, a little about my background is I grew up in Montana, and I'm a Native American, Northern Cheyenne Indian. The reservation I grew up in is very poor, very desolate, just secluded from the world. It's like a different country. It's 86% unemployment and very little housing. So imagine there's like 6 generations per household. There's a lot of drugs and alcohol in my area. A lot of alcoholism within my own family. I've lost several members to cirrhosis and just alcohol. 2 of my brothers, 3 of my grandmothers, my uncle, several cousins. It's like an epidemic out there. Right now, I'm currently looking for one of my sisters who's suicidal. I have another sister who's on drugs. We try to help her. Her mind is set. It's like a race between her and my brother to see who's gonna just pass away first. And so, with that being said, I was about 12 years old when I started drinking and smoking weed and just hanging out with the wrong people, just doing everything I'm not supposed to do. No, very little supervision. My dad was always working. My mom was just at home. And I was just lying to her, not telling her the truth of what I was doing. So a little bit further down the road, I was 19 years old. I was just into drugs, just selling drugs. I was introduced to a guy who was a drug dealer in my area, and he was from California. And we started a relationship. We were together for a while, and then he brought me to California. And while I was here, I didn't know the life existed. I didn't know that men were pimps and girls were put out there like that. I didn't know any of that. So when I got here, he told me that we didn't have any money and that if I didn't do everything he told me to do, that I wasn't gonna be able to go home to see my family. And I had no idea where I was. There was no GPS. There was no I had nothing. I was just here. And so the first time that it happened to me, I remember he choked me. He choked me so bad, I couldn't breathe, and then I was just so fearful of my life because before I met him, I had a son, and his dad was abusive to me, domestic violence, and it was so bad that I woke up in the hospital 3 times thinking that I was dead. I didn't know where I was. So the fear that I had from him still was in me. So when I first got exploited, I felt like I had literally sold my soul. I mean, I've done a lot of things, but I just felt like this thing was just something that was just so shameful, and I couldn't bear to just be in my right state of mind. So I started doing more and more drugs, and then it was just an everyday routine, the same thing every day. And I was kept in a house with 6 other girls, but to 6 girls there was probably 10 men in the house. And then so they used to beat the girls a lot, just for nothing, and laugh at them and just rape them and burn them with cigarettes and slap them and tell them to do things and think that it was funny. So I watched so many girls with myself just go through this life, and I didn't know the Lord. I never knew the Lord or anything. I thought that this was the life that I was going to die in. I thought that it was it. There was no other hope. So every day I was out on international, just every day watching people and thinking, why doesn't anyone see me here? Why doesn't anyone stop? Why doesn't anyone ask me if I need help? What's going on? And then knowing that I'm being watched, and just reaching out to the police, and I remember being out at 3 in the morning one time by myself. No one else was out. And I even had an out-of-state ID, and then I told the police, and they said, you shouldn't be out here. There's nothing we can do. And so I lost all my faith in humanity. I just had a deep hatred in me that was just so deep. I hated men. I wanted to kill people. If people just look at me, I hated them. My mentality was just, my spirit was just broken. My soul was it wasn't me. I had a serious disconnect. And eventually I kept trying to get away, and then I kept being brought back. And then at one point I was actually sold for $2,500 cash to some other guy because I refused to go to LA, and I refused to get in the car, and they threatened me saying, if you don't come with us, we're gonna kill you. We're gonna beat you up right now in the alley. And then so I was just at the point where okay, you can beat me up. Go ahead, let's just get it over with. I'm not going with you to LA. And so I was sold to this other guy, and it was just the same thing, and it would just get worse and worse with each person. And then so it got to the point where I got in contact with some people who were going to Montana. And when I got to Montana, I was put into jail because I had a warrant. So during that time I was suicidal, and I wasn't contemplating suicide. It was something like I knew I was going to commit suicide. It was done for me. I was going to get a gun and I was just going to shoot myself. And I remember crying, and I was in my cell, and I was just thinking, like, God, if you're real, I need help. I'm not going to live this life anymore. I refuse to live this life, and I'm not going to do it. And so, like, the next day, I woke up. I didn't feel all the emptiness or all the brokenness or all the hatred or any pain at all. I didn't have one thing in my life to be happy about, but I felt a peace and I felt a joy that I never felt before. So I knew it was God. I mean, no one couldn't tell me differently. There was no pastor, there was no Christian telling me, hey, you know, but it was just God and me and myself inside of a cell. And I remember sitting there, and I remember being so shocked. And I was like, what's going on? And I didn't know the Bible existed, but I was led to the Bible. I remember the books in the jail were in the corner, so I went there and I got a Bible, and I started reading in John, and I started reading about Jesus and who he was and what he did, and I couldn't put it down, and I got a book. It was called Freedom from Bondages, and it was like the Lord told me, you're not going to get out of jail until you read this book. So I tried to read it really fast, but it didn't work. Like, literally, I would try to read, and it was like everything would get scrambled, and I wouldn't understand. So I said, okay. And then I would lay down and I would read like a sentence at a time. And I would only be able to handle like a sentence at a time. And it was cool to me because God, after I would read a sentence, then I would pick up my Bible and read, and then I'll be able to understand more what I just read. And so everyone thought I was crazy because people knew I was on drugs. People knew I was my family and like my background and everything. And I kept saying, Jesus, Jesus, it's Jesus. And everyone was just like, oh, she really lost it now. I didn't care. I mean, I was happy and I was sober, and I had never been sober for like 4 years straight. It was 24 hours a day for 4 years. And the Lord led me to pray for different women and things like that. I could see how the Lord was working. Like, I knew it was Him, and everything, people, everything that people would say. I mean, He speaks through unbelievers, and they don't even know, like, unbelievers encourage me, and they don't even know, like, I'm just like, that's God. God is in everything. And then so, I got into some trouble in jail for laughing too loud. It was like 3 a.m, and the jailer was so mean to me, and she took me to the bottom, to the maximum security just for laughing. And I was like, what's going on? Why am I getting in trouble? I'm a good girl now. So, but it was the Lord. He led me to pray for this lady. She was pregnant in jail. And then after that, this part is so cool because I finished the book. Literally in my life. I was laying down on my little floor cot, and the door was like behind me by my head. And I put the book down because I'd done reading it. And then I think, oh my God, I'm done with the book. And then the jailer knocks on the door and she says, roll it up. And I was like, are you sure? Because it happened to me before. They told me to roll it up, but it was a mistake. But I finished the book and I got out. It was a miracle because I had enough money to get bonded out of jail, and the Lord closed every door. He closed every door until the day that I was able to finish the book, I guess. And the man who bonded, the bondsman who bonded me out of jail, he was in tears. I don't know who he was, and I don't know who he was talking to, but somebody told him about my story and how I got saved. I think it was one of my family members who were trying to bond me out. So he told me, I'm only gonna bond you out on one condition. Please tell me how you're able to stay sober off of meth and stuff like that. And then I was like, it's God, it's not me. It's nothing, it's just God, it's Jesus. And like, he was in tears and he told me to promise him that I was gonna keep in contact with him, which I didn't. I don't know why, but pretty much everything that you guys have on the paper, like, just, I mean, it's true. I mean, I have PTSD, I have depression, I have anxiety, and like, I went to school and I got a degree, and I learned about all the mental illnesses, and like, I have every single one, and I'm thinking like, why am I not in a psychiatric home? Because I have the Lord. And he's my leader, like, he's the man, like, he tells me everything and he shows me which way to go, and if I get off course, he brings me back. And I actually moved back to California in 2008, and I went to school. I loved it, California. Besides this dark, evil side of California, I don't like that part. Like, I hate it. But California, the beauty and the scenery and stuff like that, I fell in love with it. So there's no, like, they don't really help people in Montana education-wise and things like that. So I moved here and I got a degree, and I moved to Hayward like two years ago. I moved to Hayward and I was looking for a new church. So I visited Faith Fellowship, and it was totally a God thing, because I've always wanted to help women who are put in my situation. I just was thinking, how can I help? What can I do? I mean, I'm just me, like, and me, I will take a gun and I will just go get them. I mean, I'm not nothing nice. So like, that was in the back of my mind, but I was in church and they had a what do you call it? They had an announcement about Love Never Fails. And I couldn't believe it, and I was like, wow. So I went to the meeting and I told Vanessa my story, and then ever since then, I've just been at every meeting, going to outreaches. I do the intake work. I'm working on being a mentor. Also, there was a point when I was trying to leave the life, there was an APB out of my life, and my picture was posted at every corner store in Oakland. And so I had a lot of fear of going into Oakland. I had a lot of fear of just that area. So my whole time in California, I worked in like every city except for Oakland. But now, God gave me a job. Like, I'm actually a life coach, and I work at Frick Middle School in East Oakland. And so I drive down International every morning and every afternoon. So God brought me back to that area, which I love this scripture. And I pray there, and I'm like, God, why am I here? But I don't care, like, I'm happy, right? And so, you know, God is working, and I just really love that people are just stepping up, and they're just, prayer is so powerful. And I just can't wait to see what God does. I wanted to read you guys the scripture that God gave me, because I was like, what happened to me, right? So God gave me the scripture in Ezekiel think I found it. So Ezekiel 36. I think it's 22. Okay. Ezekiel 36:26. No, Ezekiel 36:25. Ezekiel 36:25. Okay. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from your idols I will cleanse you. I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you. And I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. You shall dwell in the land that I gave your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. And I will deliver you from your uncleanliness, and I will summon the grain and make it abundant and lay no famine upon you. I will make the fruit of the tree and the increase of the field abundant, that you may never suffer the disgrace of famine among the nations. Then you will remember your evil ways and your deeds that were not good, and you will loathe yourselves for your iniquities and your abominations. It is not for your sake that I will act, declares the Lord God. Let that be known to you. Be ashamed and confounded for your ways, O house of Israel. But yeah, when I heard that, I was just like, yes, that's what God did for me. He gave me a new heart.
Yeah.